So it looks like I've upset the internet yet again. I know, another controversial synthetic man video. Imagine my shock. And what insane radical opinions did I share this time that earned the wrath of Reddit? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's see here. I said the episode was just okay, that race-swapping established characters is bad, the show is suspiciously diverse featuring several strong black female characters in just the first episode, and that Bella Ramsey is a goblin. Yup, that's it. That's all it takes to get dislike bombed in current year. The fact that the Overton window has shifted so far to the left that race-swapping characters is now accepted by mainstream audiences is mind-blowing to me. Now, we all know it only goes one way. If the next Black Panther had blonde hair and blue eyes, I bet we'd have another Summer of Love on our hands. But I don't even have to use such an extreme example. If War Machine, or Luke Cage, or even Ironheart, a character literally nobody likes, was whitewashed, thousands of people would boycott the next Marvel movie. You people aren't just hypocrites, you're mentally ill. As for the other criticisms of my video, I really don't care if you think I'm racist or sexist. You're wasting your time. I simply point out things I don't like. I've done that since the start of my channel nearly 3 years ago. It has become increasingly apparent to me that nobody actually wants to hear a different opinion anymore. You guys just want to see your own beliefs be reaffirmed time and time again. Gee, I wonder, is Velma a bad show? Let me just watch 10 of the same fucking video telling me what I already know just so that I feel better about myself. So yeah, I'm gonna continue to share my controversial opinion. If you don't like it, fuck off. And now let's get to the episode 2 breakdown. I was actually surprised at the quality of this one. I think it's definitely a step up from the previous one. Now I do have a couple major issues with it, both of it being changes from the game, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So without further ado, here's episode 2. Episode 2 begins with another flashback to 2003 taking place in Indonesia. And we follow an old professor of mycology who is taken to a research lab, and we're shown the beginning of the outbreak, essentially, and how it spread through our food, which makes a lot of sense as to how everyone became infected. And there's a lot of build-up and tension in this scene, and we are led to believe that the body will reanimate and bite the professor, but it doesn't happen, which actually is a pretty decent subversion. I think personally I would have preferred if she would have gotten bit, but fuck it, this was a pretty good horror tactic. And the scene ends with the professor suggesting the only way to defeat the fungus is to firebomb everything, essentially. The Resident Evil method of getting rid of zombies. Well, obviously it didn't work this time. Back in the present, we see Ellie wake up in some abandoned building, as Joel and Tess watch over her, basically waiting to see if she'll turn. This is actually a good change from the game, in my opinion, as it obviously shows that Joel and Tess don't immediately believe that she's immune to the fungus, which you wouldn't after surviving 20 years in this apocalypse. I will say the scene drags on a little bit too long, and like I said in the previous review, they definitely made Ellie more of a bitch in this version, which is really not helping on top of the whole Bella Ramsey's face situation, to try and put it more lightly this time. But overall, I'd say it was a good scene. Now, the next scene is actually what makes this episode for me, as the destroyed Boston landscape actually looks really faithful to the game and just really high budget in general for a TV show. Now, I know this is HBO and this is kind of their thing, but I'm still impressed that they were able to put this much effort into truly making this look like an apocalyptic landscape, but the type of apocalypse with overgrown plants everywhere, which is much more rare than the nuclear apocalypse or Mad Max variant. During this scene, Tess and Ellie are talking, and we're told more about her backstory, stuff that players of the game already know. There's another allusion to the Left Behind DLC, which I have no doubt will be a flashback sequence in a later episode. And eventually the trio arrive at the abandoned hotel. Now, this might not end up being the case for the entire series, but seeing all of these locations from the game really has a lot of novelty to it. I don't think I've ever seen a video game adaptation be this close to the original, except maybe the beginning of the first Silent Hill movie. And it's funny I say this because as I'm in the editing process and looking back through a walkthrough of the Last of Us game, it turns out this hotel is from a completely different section, much later on when it's just Joel and Ellie. Instead of a hotel in the original game, you were climbing through one of the crashed skyscrapers. And during this entire sequence, it was still pouring down rain from when they'd escaped the quarantine zone. Now, does this change really matter in the grand scheme of things? Not exactly, because the hotel was still memorable enough that I recognized it as soon as they went inside, but I don't know, I just thought that was interesting enough to share. After climbing up several flights of stairs, Tess has to climb up ahead to unlock a door from the other side, and we finally get a one-on-one scene between Joel and Ellie, and you'll see the first of my two major problems with this show. This was something I was worried about in the first episode as well, but this is just not Joel and Ellie. For starters, Joel is not nearly as angry or dominant or masculine as his original portrayal in the first game. This will be incredibly evident when I do a side-by-side comparison of a later scene. Instead, acting just kind of depressed and distant. The distant part is accurate for obvious reasons, but goddamn dude, Pedro Pascal is not selling a survivor of the apocalypse for 20 years. He just doesn't seem hardened, he seems like he's given up. And then the other problem, the real elephant in the room, is Ellie, and again, completely ignoring her appearance, she's acting straight up unlikable. And listen, Ellie had her little bitch moments in the original, she absolutely did, but that could easily be written off as just a teenager being a teenager. This is taking it way too far. And so while obviously their characters are going to develop and grow closer over time, this is a really bad start. And so once our heroes finally make their way to the balcony to see if their long, safer path is clear, obviously it's not. Now there's a horde of zombies laying around, and we are given the next major diversion from the games, where apparently all of the fungal matter that is spread across walls and the floor has some kind of weird hive mind communication with all the zombies. If you step on a patch, it will somehow alert all of the zombies that are touching the fungus up to like a mile radius or something. Now, honestly, conceptually, if this was in the game, I think it would make for a really cool stealth mechanic because you would have to avoid certain parts of the floor. But the fact is, this is not how the game works, and it's gonna have major ramifications for how they navigate the world in the future. Now, I'm not going to judge it yet, because maybe it'll make for a cool later plot point, but it's kind of a weird change. This is essentially what they replaced the spore infection thing with. And so the trio make their way to the museum, the shorter, more dangerous path, and at first they think they're in luck, as the fungus has dried up and died inside the museum. But of course, if you played the game, you remember this is where clickers show up and you have a stealth segment. And actually, just like the games, they tried to stealthily sneak around the clickers. And I already know one of you are going to write this in the comments because I already read all the Marlene comments from the last video. Yes, I'm aware these are the same clicker voice actors as from the game. Yeah, that's a cool factoid. It doesn't really change anything other than the fact that, yeah, the clickers sound just like the game, and that's cool. And so, of course, just like when I played the remake remaster on stream, they get discovered and have to kill the two clickers. And unlike the game, Joel gets grabbed and doesn't instantly die, and he doesn't have a shiv. What the fuck? This isn't accurate to the game at all. Wow, 1,000 up, dudes. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Jokes aside, this sequence is actually pretty intense, and specifically the moment where Joel slowly reloads his revolver trying to be as quiet as possible, that was actually really well done. Once the two clickers are dead, Ellie discovers that she has been scratched once again, which is obviously set up for the last scene of the episode, and our heroes make their way to the roof where there's a plank connecting the two buildings. Now here's another part of the show that wasn't handled so well. They made it fairly subtle that Tess got infected in the original game sometime during that fight. In this version, it is way too obvious. Now, you could attribute part of that to the fact that I obviously know this is when she gets infected, but she just acts a little bit too weird, too snippy, wanting to hurry up. Yeah, okay, we get it, she's infected. This is just too obvious. Then we end the scene with an iconic line straight from the game.
Is it everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out, but man, you can't deny that view.
So is that everything you hoped for?
Jury's still out, but man, you can't deny that view.
As the trio make their way to the Capitol building, they discover the Fireflies are nowhere to be seen. And they make their way inside and find that they've all been slaughtered. Now we get to my other major problem of the episode, and definitely the bigger of the two. They fucked up this entire scene. The first major change is that it's the infected that got to the Fireflies and wiped them all out instead of Fedra. And so, of course, Joel wants to give up and just go back. There's no point in delivering Ellie anymore. They don't even know where this mysterious hospital in some other quarantine zone is. All they know is it's somewhere out west. And so, just like the game, Tess says she's staying. Ellie figures out she's infected. Joel asks her to see the bite. And at first, I thought everything was fine, except the acting here is completely fucking wrong. Without a doubt, this part was done way worse than the game. I can just play you some side-by-sides here.
What are we doing here? This is not us.
What do you know about us? About me?
I know that you are smarter than this.
Really? Guess what? We're shitty people, Joel. It's been that way for a long time.
No, we are survivors.
This is our chance.
It is over, Tess!
Joel, can you help me?
No! Tess, it's over.
Now, we tried. Let's just go home.
I'm not going anywhere. This is my last stop.
What?
Our luck had to run out sooner or later.
You going on?
No, don't! Don't touch me.
Holy shit. She's infected.
We are going home.
This is not my fucking home! I mean, our luck had to run out sooner or later.
She's infected.
Joel,
Let me see.
I didn't mean for this.
Show it to me. Oh, Christ.
Show me.
Oops, right? Give me your arm. This was 3 weeks. I was bitten an hour ago, and it's already worse. This is fucking real, Joel. You've got to get this girl to Tommy's. He used to run with this crew. He'll know where to go.
No. That was your crusade. I am not doing that.
Yes, you are. Look. There's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
Oops. Right. This is real. Joel, she's fucking real.
No, I can't. They won't take her. They're not gonna take her.
They will, because you'll convince them. Yes, you will. I never ask you for anything, not to feel the way I felt, not to you shut the fuck up, because I don't have time. This is your chance. You get her there.
I mean, come on, at what point can you not deny this is a different Joel? This is not our Joel. The whole point of his fucking character is that he's supposed to be borderline unlikable because of all the horrible tragedies he's been through. He's closed his heart to any other people. So of course he's cold and constantly angry and has no hope for the future. Pedro Pascal's Joel keeps the no hope for the future part, but the rest is completely missing. He's much more bland, much more submissive. He's an emasculated new male that has somehow survived 20 years in the apocalypse. And of course, in another major change from the game, he kills one of the surviving infected, but he stands on a patch of fungus. And so a horde of zombies a mile away suddenly wake up and are rushing toward the Capitol building. So just like the game, Tess decides to stay behind, but unlike the game, there's conveniently oil barrels around, and grenades, which she spills all over the room. Joel and Ellie leave, but for some reason Ellie wants to stay behind, even though she's barely gotten to know Tess, and the acting does not convey in any way that she was emotionally attached to her, so that was a fucking weird choice. And in the weirdest choice of the episode, the zombies break in, one eventually sees Tess, walks straight up to her as she's attempting to spark her lighter, which keeps failing like some cliche fucking movie. And then, in what can only be explained as the writer's barely disguised fetish, the fungus pours out of the zombie's mouth and he kisses her. Like, what the fuck? I'm telling you, this is fetish content. You can't convince me otherwise. So eventually the lighter works, and the building explodes, killing all the infected inside. The episode ends with Joel and Ellie taking one last look, and then Ellie just kinda standing there, staring into the camera. So in conclusion, this episode was actually pretty good. I was definitely entertained. It easily kept my attention for the full 50 minutes. I think the portrayal of post-apocalyptic Boston was fantastic, but not even just because it looks like the game, but it just looks good, period. And the museum scene with the clickers was tense, it was decently well choreographed, and the clickers look great, so this episode certainly had a lot of good elements. That being said, my question from the first episode still stands. What is the point of this adaptation? And don't you worry, I also read all the comments saying that you can now watch this with your mother and she can enjoy the story of The Last of Us. What a weirdly specific statement so many of you have. Do none of you have fathers? Oh wait, don't answer that, you're Redditors. But seriously, I don't think that's a terrible reason to want a TV adaptation if you really enjoy a story from a game, but look, you should know this by now if you watch the channel. I'm not a story guy for games. That doesn't mean I hate every story. I think Silent Hill 2's story is fucking fantastic. But when it comes to these Sony cinematic movie games, there's almost no point to having an adaptation of them because they're movie games, and I don't think I like the story of any of them enough to want my parents to see them. But whatever, I suppose your reason is as valid as any. My real problems with the episode are what I already stated before. One, that Joel and Ellie so far are not accurate to their game portrayal, and both for the negative, absolutely not improvements whatsoever, especially Joel, who's just forgettable at this point. And I think I actually can blame Pedro Pascal's acting, but I don't know if it's because of his skill as an actor or just how he was directed to act. Anyone who's played the game knows Joel is a fucking ball of rage, dude. You could pick any random cutscene, and he's pissed off about something, and he's usually justified. And then, of course, you have Ellie, which I'm gonna refrain from making any obvious statements I already made, but yeah, let's just say I don't like this portrayal either. Tess is dead, so I guess it doesn't really matter either way. I think she did fine, other than the fact that they obviously made her uglier for no reason. So all in all, definitely a solid episode, just with some flaws that I worry are going to continue into the rest of the series. I'm still interested, this is still definitely better than Halo or Resident Evil, and sadly, it's probably one of the best video game adaptations of all time because most of them are so fucking bad. But I'm not going to say the show's amazing, but I'm also not going to say it's terrible because it's not terrible. So if that pisses you off somehow, I don't know how to fucking help you, dude. But because Forspoken and Dead Space Remake are about to come out, I'm going to cut it here. I'm probably not going to review the next episode. I wasn't even originally going to review this one immediately, but I had nothing better to do. So instead, I'll probably review episode 3 and 4, or 3, 4, and 5, depending on if anything major happens in the next two. That's about it. See you next time, guys.